Hi everyone. Today for Autism Acceptance and Awareness Week, I'm talking to Jennifer Lowe. Jennifer is a PhD candidate at the Olga Tennison Autism Research Centre at Trobe University. She's also the Research Associate in the Research Impact Unit at ACU and a member of the ACU Autism Inclusion Advisory Group. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me, Janine.
So to start off with, I want to ask you, when did you first become aware you were autistic, and when did you develop a positive autistic identity?
So in terms of knowing I was autistic, I was diagnosed formally at the age of 30 in 2018 by an educational psychologist. At that stage, I was halfway through my PhD, and I really wanted to understand some of the challenges I was having with switching tasks. So that was the sort of, drive behind getting that assessment done. I wasn't aware that I was going for an autism assessment as such. But having said that, I always knew when I was growing up that I was different to other children. So I guess I always knew that I was different. I didn't know what that was or why that was. And in terms of, developing a positive identity, I think that initially with the diagnosis, it was this huge relief, oh, this is why, and there are other people like me. And it was such an amazing feeling to, belong to the, autistic community and autism community. And then there was also this sort of, I guess, sense of grief, you could say, in not receiving the supports that would have benefited me until that point. And so I think that despite the mixed feelings, what came out of that was the message that, I know some people say better late than never. I still would have liked to know earlier, but just knowing that all of these, differences or struggles or challenges, that there's language to describe them, and that, for most of the time, there is another autistic person who has gone through a similar thing, and being able to talk to the autistic community and, my colleagues and my friends and my family has been really instrumental in developing that positive identity.
Thank you. How did you become involved in your current role as Research Associate in the Research Impact Unit at ACU?
So I initially reached out to Sandra when I was probably first diagnosed. I saw an article that she wrote in The Age, and it was about the fact that calling someone autistic is not an insult, it's a neurotype. And so upon reading that article, I just felt so strongly that, that resonated with me. And so I got in touch with Sandra to say thank you for writing the article. And, we maintained communication, as two female autistic academics. And so working as a research assistant in various roles during my PhD for different universities. And then when this opportunity came up, I was there with bells on, because I just absolutely love the research that ACU has done and is still doing in the autism research space, and having that being led by people with lived experience. So that's how I came to be involved.
Okay. People often focus on the limitations or challenges of autistic people, but I'd like to know what you see as the strengths you bring to your work.
So I will say there are certainly limitations. I just want to acknowledge that, because I know so often, and rightly so, there is a strengths-based approach. And I guess I just want to acknowledge, for myself and for other people, to keep it real, that the challenges are very real. In terms of the strengths that I bring to my role, previously I would have said that's just me, that's just the way that I am, but actually it's the way that I'm wired. So my attention to detail is very astute. I'm very organized in terms of knowing I guess what needs to be done to get from A to B. So that sort of, planning step by step and breaking tasks down, and also the ability to, which probably is in contrast to some of the literature, but the ability for big picture thinking. So, yes, I can get down into the nitty gritty detail, but also I'm quite good at taking a step back and looking at things, overall and saying, okay, well, what does this mean for autistic people if it's an autism research project, for example, or the translation piece. So my background is in corporate marketing and events marketing. So in terms of having that view of, this is amazing information that we've gleaned from the autistic community, but actually how can we then leverage that to make real world change? So I think that's there's some of the strengths that I bring.
They are amazing strengths. What advice do you have for neurotypical people who want to support or advocate for autistic people?
It's really interesting, I guess, the use of neurotypical, in the sense that when the neurodiversity movement is picking up pace. I would probably say for all human beings, regardless of neurotype, to be able to support autistic people or people who identify as neurodiverse, it's really to just ask, and it seems really simple, and it seems really, what's the word? It seems almost too easy, what can we do to help? Ask us. we will tell you, unless we don't know, in which case anyone's guess is better. But I think that there is this, and I can certainly understand why, but there is a sense of not wanting to, breach people's privacy or make them feel awkward, or perhaps they feel awkward themselves. It's, maybe they don't know what to say, but certainly from my perspective and, my colleagues and people that I speak with who are on the spectrum, it's okay to ask. It's not taboo. Autism is part of who I am. So if you want to support me, just ask me and I'll let you know how.
When do you feel like you can be yourself? How are those around you behaving that make you feel comfortable being yourself?
So being myself, again, since receiving my diagnosis, I've really had to reconceptualize this idea of being myself, because previously there were some things that I understood were socially not okay, but at the same time I felt as though I needed to do things. So for example, if I was talking to people, eye contact isn't a problem for me, but when I'm thinking, when I'm trying to concentrate, I will very often look away. And so people would say, why aren't you looking at me? And it would, I sort of had this little spiel about, when I'm concentrating, I find it distracting to look at other people, so I'll look off to the side. And so those sort of scripts that I had developed anyway, not knowing that I was autistic, obviously came in handy. But being able to be myself now, at work, for example, the team are aware that I'm autistic, so it isn't. If I was to look at the wall during a meeting while I'm explaining myself, no one's going to ask me, why are you doing that? And it sort of takes away that barrier of feeling that I need to justify everything. And so when I am being myself, I feel like I'm free to ask questions. I'm free to, ask for more information. I think that so often, I guess, maybe growing up, in school, and then the notion of the power imbalance between, you know, teachers and students, or even at a university, like, you know, supervisors and students, there's this notion that what's being said should be understood. And so there was always a hesitation for me to ask extra questions, because I thought I was either being silly or annoying, or, you know, everybody else got it. But I think that that's probably the main thing. So for me to be myself in an environment, it really is about having other people firstly know that I'm autistic, so I don't have to justify things that I do that may not be not autistic. And then also that I'm comfortable to share myself, I suppose, with people, and, you know, ask the question, and whether that, you know, makes the other person giggle, or whether that makes the other person say, oh, like, I didn't realize that you didn't know that. And I'm like, no, really, I didn't. So those sorts of things are really helpful for me to feel like I can just be authentic.
My final question is, what do you think is the most important thing neurotypicals can do or understand that would make life easier for autistic people?
I feel like I could speak to this question for an hour, but I will do my best to make it succinct. So in terms of things that would be really important for people to understand, I guess I can liken it to the notion when someone has had the same experience as you, and you try to explain to them what that experience is like, there is almost this shared mutual understanding that is so automatic, you know. I see it in other people, you know, whether it's giving birth, or being a mum, or you know, these sort of shared experiences that people have among themselves. It creates this unspoken understanding where nobody needs to say another word, they just get it. And so when I'm talking to other autistic people, that's the level of understanding that we have, you know, with one another. And so to try to recreate that with someone who hasn't got a lived experience of autism can be challenging, not only for me to explain it in words, but also for the other person to grasp, you know, what that means. So I think that if I do attempt to, you know, put words to it, being autistic is not my choice, if that makes sense. And so if I can't be somewhere because it is too loud, or too bright, or too overwhelming, or, you know, a certain smell makes me feel queasy, or these types of things, I'm not being fussy or picky, or, you know, annoying, or selfish, or any of these things that may be perceived. So just as a, you know, I guess silly hypothetical example, if I'm out at a cafe with someone and we plan to have lunch or what have you, and then the environment becomes overwhelming from a sensory perspective, and I need to either, you know, shift to an outside table, or, you know, whatever the circumstances are, I think that there is so often, because of the lack of shared lived experience, that it looks like a choice, or it could be perceived as a choice. And so I think that that having that understanding is really, really important. You know, if there's something that is silly, quote unquote, that I'm anxious about, I'm not choosing to be anxious about it. You know, I don't wake up in the morning and think to myself, oh, you know, it'd be really great if I could be really anxious. So I guess that understanding that if there is an interaction or a circumstance that is challenging, for the non-autistic people in the room, then I would say that it's probably equally challenging, if not more challenging, for the autistic person in the room. So I guess just, you know, having that in mind, as annoying it is for someone to, you know, change plans because of sensory needs, or, you know, be not at baseline because of whatever is happening in the room, as difficult and as frustrating as that might be for a non-autistic person, I can assure you that, yeah, the autistic person wants to be able to do those things without any difficulty. And so it's yeah, I think that level of shared understanding would just be amazing.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer, for being so open and sharing your experiences with us today.
Thanks, Janine. It's been my pleasure.